Tonight on Nation to Nation, it's our last show of the season and the last chance for Romeo Saganash's Bill 262.
To refuse this legislation will be probably the most disappointing fact in my life.
Our political panel weighs in on another bill, child welfare legislation, that's also on the brink.
We are rushing through this very, very important legislation.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamran, and this is the last episode of Nation to Nation this season. We'll be back next fall, but someone who won't be is NDP MP Romeo Saganash. He was first elected in 2011, but he won't be running for re-election in his Northern Quebec riding this fall. So what is his legacy? Well, he'll be remembered for telling Prime Minister Trudeau and his government it didn't give a damn, and I'm paraphrasing here, about Indigenous rights during question period. If his private member's Bill C-262 gets royal assent soon, Canada's laws must be in line with the UN's Declaration on Indigenous Rights. But to tell us more, I'm joined by Mr. Saganash himself. Welcome to Nation to Nation.
Thank you for having me.
Why are you leaving federal politics?
Well, even before I got elected in 2011, I had told late Jack Layton, who had been courting me for, I would say, at least 5 years before that, that I'll try to do my best for 2 terms. And that's what I did. I did my best. The first real question I asked to the clerk of the House of Commons in 2011 was, can I do my speeches in Cree? Can I ask my questions in Cree? And I was told in 2011 that, Mr. Saganash, as a jurist, you should know that the 2 official languages in this place are English and French. That was what I was told in 2011. So I continued to fight that. Today, I'm pretty satisfied by the fact that any other Indigenous member of Parliament who would wish to speak their language in Parliament will not have to fight for it. That's an accomplishment.
You mentioned that was the first thing that happened to you when you got here. Admittedly, your first year was kind of rocky. There was a well-publicized leave of absence, of course. Did you find that the jump from Indigenous politics to federal politics more than you were expecting?
Not really, not really. I think, and I've told this to many people in the past, fighting from outside the walls of the Parliament of Canada or the National Assembly in Quebec is one thing. But I think fighting from within the walls of those institutions is another thing, and that's what we've accomplished. I'm happy for what we have accomplished, including Bill C-262, which was passed by Parliament and now before the Senate, and it's been.
Well, we'll certainly we'll get into Bill C-262, that's for sure. But I wanted to ask you, do you ever look back and play the what-if game? I mean, what if Jack Layton hadn't passed away?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think we lost a great leader. The fact that he passed away at that time, I think, proved a lot of things, including the fact that maybe we would be government today, and I regret that. We've worked hard.
I remember speculating on you becoming a cabinet minister and all that at the time, at the last election.
Well, it didn't happen, and it's okay. I do not regret the 8 years and more that I spent in Parliament. I resisted the call for a long time. Jack had asked me 5 or 6 years before to run in Parliament. I resisted. But that experience has given me a lot of knowledge and things to work on upon from now on. So I don't regret that experience of the last 8 years.
You're just one of a number of high-profile NDPs who are not seeking re-election. What do you think the future of the party is in the hands of Jagmeet Singh?
Well, I'm hoping they'll do, I think they have an opportunity right now, you know, bad and worse between Liberals and Conservatives. They have an opportunity to do something great. They have absolutely great candidates across the country that are running for the NDP. So I'm hoping that they take this opportunity to do great.
Of course, we've mentioned Bill C-262 a couple of times. How did you come up with the idea to table that private members' legislation?
It was a long road. When our ambassador to the UN, the Cree had an ambassador to the UN, Ted Moses, back then, in 1984, asked me to accompany him to the UN. He said, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to do work, just observe how we do things at the UN. So I went in 1984. And that is when the Working Group on Indigenous Populations, was the name of the committee at that time, started to work on drafting the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And I've gone from 1984 throughout the years, for the 23 years that this process lasted, every year. And until 2007, September 2007, when the UN General Assembly adopted the UN Declaration and reaffirmed the UN Declaration 10 consecutive years afterwards. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that I tabled that bill, and I'm hoping that after the Parliament, that the Senate will also approve Bill C-262 to complete the circle, for me at least. You know, spent 23 years there, and I just want to complete the circle and go home.
Of course, we know it's in committee. We're so close to the finish line. It just needs third reading and then royal assent. But it all has to be done before the end of June. How disappointed will you be if we're this close and it just doesn't happen?
I'll be very disappointed. I've worked all my life on these kind of things. I started in 1981 with late Grand Chief Billy Diamond, who asked me to work on these issues for his mandate back then. So I'll be disappointed, and it will be unfortunate because we are in 2019. This is a place that everybody assumes to be a progressive place called Canada. And for our institutions to refuse this legislation, we could be leaders. Our institutions to refuse this legislation will be probably the most disappointing fact in my life.
Saying that and saying how you wanted to work from the inside, so to speak, you know, the upcoming election will have to be several Indigenous candidates for various parties. I mean, what do you say to them who, you know, they're running and a few will get elected?
Yeah, well, I remember the days when I was the first Cree from northern Quebec to get a degree in law back then in 1989. It was a long time ago. And the following years, I noticed that there were a lot of young Crees that went to law school, got their degree, and practicing law today. The same thing happened with the elections. People see what it can be achieved in Parliament, and that's what we're doing. We had a record number of candidates in the last election, 2015. I think we're going to beat that record in 2019, and I hope that continues. We need people in those places to get through all of the things that we need to do in these places. So I'm glad that many of us have inspired others to do that. So that's
just need more conservative Indigenous senators, I guess. So I guess the last question is, what does the immediate future hold for you?
Well, there's a lot of opportunities before me. My long-lasting experience with Indigenous issues, my legal and experience as well, brings me to a point where there are many offers on the table. So I told all of them that I wouldn't even consider them until I'm done. So when I'm done, I'll consider those offers.
Well, hopefully when you're done, it means also that Bill C-262 has gotten royal assent, and I want to wish you good luck, and we'll certainly be following your future career. Thank you for talking to me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
After the break, we'll have our final political panel of the season. Welcome back. It's our last discussion of the season with our panel of MPs. As well, our current session of Parliament is winding down, with an election just a matter of months away. But there's a lot of work to do as we race to the finish line. There's a huge push to get bills affecting child welfare, Indigenous languages, and Indigenous rights signed into law before the end of June. To discuss further, I'm joined by our panel of MPs. Welcome to Nation to Nation.
Good afternoon.
And joining us is Parliamentary Secretary for Indigenous Services, Dan Vandel.
Good afternoon, Todd.
Conservative Shadow Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Cathy McLeod. Welcome. And NDP MP for Northern Saskatchewan, Georgina Jollyball. Welcome. Mr. Vandel, I'm going to start with you today. I'm going to start with child welfare reform. Bill C-92 was in committee earlier this week. An amendment was put forward by Elizabeth May called PV5, and basically it wanted to ensure adequate long-term sustainable funding. But the Liberals at the Indigenous Committee voted it down. Why did that happen?
Well, actually, it was very similar to the motion that we had already approved on sustainable funding. It was unanimously approved that the principles of sustainable funding for Indigenous child welfare is in the main body of the bill, and with that amendment, which everybody voted for, it made other amendments redundant. And there was many amendments, and a lot of them were redundant, quite frankly. So we were able to move an amendment on funding for Indigenous child welfare. We were also able to move an amendment that we would adhere to the principles of UNDRIP, United Nations rights on the rights of Indigenous people, which is in the main body of the motion. So all in all, we did a lot of work. We did a lot of pre-consultation on that bill, and I think at the end of the day, we are on track to have it adopted by the end of session.
Ms. McLeod, the Conservatives, you supported that amendment by the Green Party leader Elizabeth May. So does this explanation you just heard sit well with you?
It was a large bill. There was 80+ amendments, and often when you made one amendment, it really did actually change the nature of other ones that were down the road. But before we sort of get into that, I just want to say thank you to Nation, APTN. It's been 4 years, and of course I've been a regular on your program, and hopefully it's been valuable for your viewing audience.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'll continue, I guess, Georgina, you, the NDP, of course, supported that. Again, are you buying the explanation that it's redundant and we just didn't need that amendment?
Unfortunately, no. The witnesses who sat through the committee, first of all, the legislation, Bill C-91, came in too late. And so what's happening is the current government and the members of Parliament, we are rushing through this very, very important legislation. Two things missing. One, the funding, the long-term sustainable funding is not clear and it isn't mentioned anywhere, and I don't know where the Liberals are talking about this amendment, because we spent the whole day yesterday going through amendments and the Liberals voted against majority of the amendments. And secondly, we were talking about another very piece of amendment yesterday, First Nation children from 2 nations. Where does the child go? Where does the children go? And every discussion and any discussion we were having about the importance and the interest of the child, the Liberals weren't interested in having that discussion, and they shut that down. And so, to me, they're rushing, and I think to me, they look like they're panicking.
Of course, a lot of legislation is not going to get through. I mean, you yourself, your private member's bill, which is in the Senate right now to create an Indigenous holiday, is probably not going to make it. How disappointed are you on that?
First of all, I still have hope. We still got 3 weeks. And so right now, one of the most important legislation before the Senate is Bill 262. My colleague, Romeo MP Saganash's bill, the UNDRIP, the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights. That piece of legislation to pass is very, very important, because it will protect the treaty rights and the rights across Canada. Right now, the discussion that the Liberals are having, the framework discussion, even this the language bill that is before us, and again, the Liberals are panicking because we got 3 weeks and they need to go through. And one of the amendments they voted against was about the top commissioner. We wanted the amendment to say the top commissioner should be Indigenous, because we have qualified people across Canada. But again, the Liberals voted that down. To strengthen the bills, these very important legislations, the government, the Liberals voted against any talk of amendment.
Ms. McLeod, I suppose, was the government's reconciliation and doing it through a whole host of different pieces of legislation just too ambitious?
What I have to agree with my colleague from the NDP, here we are, there's 3 weeks left in Parliament. To be frank, the legislative agenda in terms of the Indigenous file has been very light, it's been very weak, and then all of a sudden they're bringing a number of critical bills right at the end, government bills. So, I mean, I think the only other major bill that we dealt with was S3, and we still haven't come to complete resolution on that. So I do agree. The problem is mistakes get made when you try to rush things through at the end, and that's what's happening. So, you know, certainly the Indigenous language, we've been out there, we've been supporting it. The child welfare, we recognize it's really critical, but it really, truly is being rushed. The Senate is going to have some significant work, and, you know, of course, if they make amendments, we still have some more House process. So it's, you know, in spite of the nice words that they say, what they've done in a legislative 4 years, they've had 3.5, 4 years, it's been very, very weak.
Mr. Vandal, I'll get your response, and I'm going to mention C-99 was another bill that was just dropped yesterday, which has changed the oath to reflect the Indigenous peoples, the citizenship oath, I should say.
Yes. First of all, it's important to note that on both C-92, child welfare, and C-91 languages, there was extensive consultation. There was over a thousand. If I can just finish my thought without being interrupted. There was over 1,000 people consulted, from chiefs to grassroots people. There were over 65 meetings consulted on C-92. In fact, Senator Murray Sinclair said that C-92 was a model for future development of bills. The manner in which we actually went out across Canada and talked to real people about Indigenous child welfare. It's not perfect. If it's not perfect, the NDP will never approve it. But it's something that really was a model.
I want to clarify
concerning
that the NDP
concerning
do
the financing,
the
financing principles in Bill C-92.
We do support
MP
it. We want to strengthen
is
all
simply
these pieces of
what
legislation.
she's saying is not accurate. There is clear language in for sustainable funding for Indigenous child welfare, and in fact, the language was so clear that she supported the bill at the end of the day.
Again, I want to be clear on these very important things. The government waited too long, and they're pushing these legislations through. What he's saying is inaccurate. The majority of the amendments brought forward from all sides were to strengthen the weakened legislations that they put forward. Again, real people, he's saying, what about the witnesses who came through for the Bill C-91 and Bill C-92? The witnesses spoke about both pieces of legislations, and they need to improve. And again, the government is dismissing. Yesterday, the Liberal MP said the work of Dr. Cindy Blackstock wasn't that significant, wasn't that important.
I'm not sure who said that. I'm not sure who said that.
The MP who said that dismissed the work of Dr. Cindy Blackstock.
It's important to note,
disheartening.
that the Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations supports the bill. The president of the MNC, Métis National Council, support the bill, as does Nathan Obed of ITK.
Again, we're not disputing that.
For your own province.
And so, fortunately, we could go on talking about that, but Ms. McLeod, I want to give you the last word on this before we go.
So, I think the Bill 92, I do want to see this bill pass. It is less than perfect, but we need to move in that direction. So I think, we'll have to massage, and there's still really going to be opportunities within regulations, but more importantly, in the agreements that the First Nations make, the tripartite, hopefully tripartite, but at least bilateral agreements, because, we can't not support this bill. Child welfare, we all know the statistics, and we need to do better.
If there's a Conservative government, would Andrew Scheer continue to support funding this bill if there was an austerity?
We've been supporting the bill. We supported the clause that supported the principles around funding, and we do have to take care of the children, and we do have to do better. And Andrew, he's a father of 5 children. Of course, he understands the importance of doing a better job.
Okay, wish we could keep discussing this, but we can't. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to wish you good luck as you're all running for re-election. And hopefully you all get re-elected. Maybe we'll all be back here in October, who knows. Thank you. We'll have more after a short break. This was our last episode until next October. When we come back, it'll be in the middle of an election campaign, where Jody Wilson-Raybould will be running as an independent, and a record number of Indigenous people are expected to run for Parliament. Meanwhile, if you missed any part of tonight's show or any other from this past season, you can check out our podcasts. Go to aptnnews.ca/podcast. I'm Todd Lamoran. Thanks for watching, and have a great summer.